All right, so this is everything missing from the discourse on the subject of narcissism. By the way, in this video series, I will be mentioning Satan. However, none of this has anything to do with religion. Give yourself a chance to understand what's being said. I promise you it will all make sense. All right, so let's start with this point here. Corruption, or what human religions refer to as Satan, is really just the aura of disease. Corruption is an entity. It is both living and self-aware. It's pathological, and it radicalizes cells and other structural building blocks as it continues to spread throughout living systems. Satan is just corruption in an anthropomorphic form. Anthropomorphism is the practice of attributing human traits and characteristics to non-human entities. I've stated on several occasions now that corruption manifests in humans as a shitty attitude and outlook on life, but perhaps a better way to say it is a shitty attitude is what allows corruption into you and allows it to use you as a host and vessel to self-actualize through. So the way that it works is like this. When a person gets psychologically injured, now that can be as a result of something bad happening to them or them not getting something they want or feel that they deserve, more often than not, they get traumatized and or triggered into the parasitic mind state. The parasitic mind state doesn't just apply to narcissism. It also covers a host of other psychological disorders, everything ranging from PTSD and bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder to sociopathy, psychopathy, and schizophrenia, just to name a few. And unlike how it's taught in convention, trauma isn't psychological injury unto itself. It is instead phobia of disempowerment that traces back to life events in which people either weren't strong enough to protect themselves from harm or danger or powerful enough to capture things they felt they needed for safety and survival. When people become phobic of disempowerment and or triggered into the parasitic mind state, they become what's commonly referred to as narcissistic. The parasitic mind state consists of narcissism, which is self-idealizing, excessive pride, excessive vanity. It's self-worship, self-indulgence, self-justification, and an addiction to self-benefit. And by extension of narcissism, it also includes hypercompetitiveness, which is an addiction to dominating and or imposing will onto others, and aggression and or rage venting, which is just targeting others with animus and finding pleasure and joy in the injury and destruction of external values, and then also greed, which is mindless consumption, okay? In the parasitic mind state, people behave, well, parasitically. But see, you need to understand why all of this is happening, which brings us right back to the subject of corruption, or what human religions refer to as Satan. Humans are a viral parasitic species, all right? That means that they are transmuted or created beings. They are not natural or emergent life forms. A recombinant life form is and or represents an amalgamation of genetic material harvested from different life forms and spliced together to create a slave class of pathogen. Just think of it like viruses being engineered and harvested to weaponize against targeted populations. Like all agents of disease, humans are pathogens for a hive mind, in our case, society, or what human faith systems refer to as God, to self-actualize, replicate, and expand itself through. You've been groomed by society to become an instrument that corruption will ultimately use against reality, or more accurately, what Satan will use against true God. So think about it like this. Reality isn't just like, it is a body. And corruption is a disease that's trying to infect and spread throughout that body. The battle between, well, colloquially speaking, good and evil is really just natural organization and or natural body systems versus infection. It's really that simple. Natural organization versus corruption. The battle between God and Satan. Even though humans are born from corruption, even though they are the products of reconstitution because they are comprised of natural building blocks, natural genetic materials, things that were taken directly from reality itself. They were imbued with the capacity for free will by the system of reality itself. In simple terms, are you rolling with the body or are you rolling with the disease? Which is it? And don't worry, we haven't lost sight of what narcissism is, because this is all coming full circle. This is the cool part about having a beard. I want to grow it longer. I want to do it like Homeboy did in Kill Bill. Will I have to perm? Will I have to perm it to make it a soul glow? I don't know. So Satan, or corruption, it is a living, sentient, self-aware, but also disembodied life form. Every infection is a life form unto itself. It doesn't have an actual material body, so it instead manifests through a bunch of radicalized rogue cells and uses them to invade and overtake systems. Because you, and I'm talking to you here, are a recombinant life form, you were constructed with a type of switch inside of you, okay? Now, you have your innate mind, your mental faculties and reasoning capacity, and then you have something in you called automaton mode. All right, let's just call it that. Automaton mode basically turns you into a zombie and or a mindless agent of infection. In automaton mode, you think and behave and live corruptly like a parasite. Once the automaton mode is flipped on inside of you, it grants Satan and or corruption power over you and the ability to use you to do whatever it wants. This is where trauma comes into play. When something bad happens to you and or you feel injusticed, you get triggered into the parasitic mind state. Once you get triggered into the parasitic mind state, Satan can hijack your mind and use you like a puppet to wild out with. In the parasitic mind state, this entity will overtake you and use you to destroy not just other people and things, but yourself for its own amusement and satisfaction. See, you think you try to injure and humiliate and destroy people for your own amusement and satisfaction, but no, it's corruption working through you, buddy. When you have a rotten attitude and nurture a rotten attitude within yourself, you basically give Satan power over you. You give it access to you and subsequently the authority, the ability to flip that switch inside of you to automaton mode. That's all narcissism is. It's the automaton mode. Is when you think and behave like a fucking parasite. In automaton mode, you give Satan complete control over your thought process. And because corruption is a destructive force, it turns you into a destructive force as well. You become a freaking monster. When you're under Satan's influence, it can make you do damn near anything. And the more corrupt you are, meaning the more rotten your attitude is the more Satan can use you, right? And it can use you to do some of the most grotesque things. The worse you are, the worse your attitude is, the worse the crimes against reality it can get you to do. Forget everything religion says about Satan. Okay, we're going to view it in practical terms. Satan is just corruption anthropomorphized. It's that simple. You ever sit back and wonder what can make someone like destroy economic systems and starve people and create famines and create wars? Like, you ever wonder what can make someone just violently beat on someone who they know is powerless to defend themselves on fair terms? You ever wonder what makes someone even think about trying to violate a child or rape somebody or murder someone? Think about how grotesque your mind has to be to hang someone from a tree and set them on fire and smile for pictures. Think about how awful you have to be inside. All of this, it starts with a crummy attitude. This is what lets Satan in. What about abusive lovers, abusive mates? People who intentionally cause harm to those who love them and try to support and uplift them. Children, spouses, lovers. What makes someone do that type of stuff? The short answer is they're not the ones doing it. Sure, they learn to love and get addicted to the feelings of power they get from dominating and imposing will onto others, but in the grand scheme of things, they're just hosts. They're just slaves for this corruption entity to manifest through. See, once you've internalized and start building identity features around hardships you've faced in life, and as a result, enter into a zero-sum mentality and begin entering into a state of perpetual self-justification, the automaton mode has been flipped inside of you. That switch has been flipped inside of you, and you're in the parasitic mind state. At that point, you become an effective agent of disease. Parasitism is a symbiotic, non-mutual relationship between species, individuals, or groups in which one party, the parasite or master, lives and benefits at the expense of another or others, the hosts or slaves. The dominants versus the submissives. Slave thinking. Parasitism is just living and benefiting at others' expense, including and up to reality itself. Parasites create cascades of imbalance, just trying to benefit themselves at the expense of everything around them. And again, for humans, all of this starts with a rotten attitude and outlook on life. Once you have a rotten attitude, corruption can creep right in there and can turn you into a rapist, or a racist, or a pedophile, or a serial killer, or a serial rapist. It can turn you into a misogynist. It can turn you into a religious ideologue or a radical atheist or any type of tribalist. Really, the list goes on and on and on. This is why it's no one's job to manage your attitude but yours. If you don't nurture a shitty attitude within yourself, corruption can't take possession of you and use you to damage reality. It's literally that simple. Beyond this, though, a rotten attitude will literally make you crazy. I mean, literally make you crazy. The parasitic mind state is fundamentally divorced from reality, meaning once corruption flips on the automaton mode switch in your mind, you literally enter into a psychotic state. Psychosis is an inability to distinguish idealism and or the inner story from reality itself. And the more influence corruption has over you is the more psychotic you become. And the worse your attitude is, the more narcissistic you become, the more pious and judgmental, the more hyper-competitive, the more aggressive, the more greedy you become. It's the more psychotic you become. Again, this is all biomechanical. Again, a shitty attitude is something that you nurture within yourself through the associations you keep, through the habits, rituals, and practices you develop pertaining to your interactions with others, through the media you consume, and through the thoughts you dwell on. Remember, corruption, or Satan, is the essence and aura of disease. Disease spreads pathologically, and in order to claim new hosts, it must create environmental conditions that serve to radicalize new hosts and transform healthy cells and systems into vessels to self-actualize through. That means corruption, or Satan, literally uses humans to create social conditions that will trend others into having bad attitudes so that it can use them as new vessels to manifest, advance itself, and self-actualize through. It's like cancer using radicalized cells to create a toxic body environment for cancer to thrive within and spread throughout. You literally train yourself into being a vessel for corruption to use. You train yourself to be a servant of Satan. Your intentions and beliefs have absolutely nothing to do with the impact you make on reality. Your attitude does, though. A lot of Christian folks are out there like, God knows my heart. Yeah. Reality does know whether or not your heart is corrupt or it isn't. Thing is, in society, you can use pageantry and deep social acting to mask a rotten, corrupt attitude. But in reality, you can't hide. You are what you are. You are what you practice doing most. And you are 100% responsible and accountable to the system of reality for every crime you commit against it under the influence of corruption. You want to know why? Because no one makes you have a shitty attitude. That is an agreement you make with yourself. That is something you practice your way into, and you have the ability to practice your way out of. It's on you. Narcissism is just a fancy term humans came up with for having a shitty attitude and allowing that shitty attitude to trend you into doing shitty things. It's that simple. It's literally why no one pities narcissists. No one is like, oh, it's a psychological disorder, we have to help them. No, people innately understand it is a shitty attitude that manifests as terrible behavior that people absolutely have the ability to train themselves out of. No one pities it because it is self-imposed. It's 100% self-imposed. Anyway, that's part one.